What's happening? Thanks for joining me as always. It is very much appreciated. Everything Pats, a New England Patriots podcast. And by the way, a quick reminder. I just realized how bad of a job I've done doing this. I kind of take it for granted that people will watch certain episodes and they'll just figure out that I'm doing Locked On Patriots full-time, Monday through Friday. That's a bad job by me. So if you are not aware, I am hosting Locked On Patriots podcast for the Locked On Podcast Network, Monday through Friday, every single day of the week. You can check that out and get more Patriots takes from yours truly. All right, let's get into the Patriots. Let's get into the AFC. It's way too early to know what this team truly is. I always try to be as transparent as possible. We all know that May 12th is very early to try to gauge where a team truly is. These are just on-paper assessments. That's all they are. What does the team look like on paper? Do they look better than we thought they would? Do they look worse? How do they compare to other teams? And that's what I want to do today. We're going to look at these on-paper assessments, and we're going to have some fun. Now, previously, on a Locked On episode, I talked about the Patriots being ranked 23rd by ESPN's latest power rankings. This is post-draft. If you go back to May of 2024, the Patriots were ranked 30th in the power rankings. So they've jumped from 30th last May to 23rd this May. But what about the AFC? Because, of course, when we talk about being ranked 23rd, we're looking at the entire NFL. What about the AFC? Where did ESPN have the Patriots ranked in their conference? Now, on paper, again, that term is critical. On paper, ESPN has the Patriots ranked as the 10th best team in the AFC. Before I start talking about this and diving in, I want your thoughts. Don't forget to throw those comments in. They help us with the algorithm, but I also want to know how you feel. Do you think it's fair for the Patriots right now on paper to be ranked 10th in the AFC? Do you think that's a fair assessment as far as this roster and how they fit within the rest of the conference? Do you think it's fair? Do you think they should be higher than 10th? Do you think they should be lower than 10th? Where do you feel the Patriots should be in this ranking? Because ESPN has them as the 10th best team in the AFC. Now, I believe the Patriots could be higher than that. And I would likely pop them up a couple of places, not too many, but I think right from 7 to 10, that area seems fair to me. So 10 could be fair, but it's on the lower portion of the fair range for me. I think you could argue 7th, 8th. I think you could argue 10th, 11th. I would bump them up slightly higher than 10th. And let's start here, why I would bump them up slightly higher than 10th. Mike Vrabel. Let's start with the coaching staff. Who do you think? Again, throw comments in the chat if you'd like. Who do you think is a better head coach right now than Mike Vrabel that coaches in the AFC? Now, I know it's going to take a few minutes to kind of jog through the memory, try to remember everybody who is the head coach of these teams. But when I sit down and I think about AFC head coaches and guys that are better or as good as Vrabel, there's a few of them. Andy Reid. Now, you can argue Andy Reid is a product of Patrick Mahomes, et cetera, et cetera. I'm going to give Andy Reid his just due. He was very, very productive and successful in Philadelphia. He goes to Kansas City. We know what he's done with the Chiefs. His ability to diagnose defenses, figure out what his offense needs to do, getting the most out of the talent. Even though he has Patrick Mahomes, there are several guys on that team, when you look at it the last couple of years, that you'd say they fall short of some other skill position weapons that other teams have, and Reid somehow, some way makes it work for his team. He can shuffle the identity of his team. So I would say Andy Reid is on the list. Would you put John Harbaugh on that list? Do you think John Harbaugh is a better coach or as good as Vrabel? There's an argument for it. Now, there are certainly shortcomings for Harbaugh, and there are shortcomings for a lot of coaches. We've got to understand this. Coaching in the NFL overall isn't great. It's not as great as some people would hope that it would be or try to frame it as it is. There's a lot of coaches in the league that have shortcomings, that make mistakes, whether it's timeout usage, clock management, whatever it is, they have some shortcomings. And we've seen that with John Harbaugh. His team has overall been incredibly productive and successful during his time as the Ravens head coach. But you could go through some of the decisions that he has made, especially in playoff games. You can go through some of those decisions by John Harbaugh, shaking your head trying to figure out why he would make the decision that he made. But John Harbaugh is still, to me, one of the better coaches in the NFL. How about his brother, Jim? Yes, Jim Harbaugh, absolutely one of the better coaches in the league. Mike Tomlin. Tomlin's interesting. Tomlin's polarizing. There's a lot of good to Mike Tomlin. There's also some not so good with Mike Tomlin. When you look at what his teams have done in the playoffs, is that on Tomlin? Is that on the talent? Is that on both? Because Tomlin has been awful in the postseason for a long time now. And we're talking about his team not only getting beat, but how many times have the Steelers been absolutely freaking waxed in the playoffs over the past 5, 6, 7, 8 years? Plenty of times. They have been manhandled in the biggest games. But you could look at Tomlin and the quarterback situation and say, should Pittsburgh even get to the playoffs? Should they even be in the conversation some of these years? So I give Tomlin his due. I don't think he's as good of a coach as some people believe he is, but I do think that he's a good coach. So Tomlin is certainly somebody you can go back and forth on. How about Sean Payton, Denver Broncos? Again, he's another coach that has a great reputation, but if you watch him, there are some shortcomings, and some would say that he has fallen short a number of times with the talent that he had on certain teams. I think Sean Payton's a good coach. How about Sean McDermott with Buffalo? Is Sean McDermott as successful as he's been if he doesn't have Josh Allen? Of course, you could have that conversation with a lot of coaches that have good to very good to great quarterbacks. If you have a good to very good to great quarterback, you are going to have a better chance to win as a football team. Sean McDermott, he's another guy. So we just have this conversation of, yes, he's a good coach, but is he as good as some people think? Mike Vrabel, to me, is in that list of guys I just mentioned. Mike Vrabel fits. I would say, in my own opinion, I would put Vrabel behind Andy Reid. I would put him behind Jim Harbaugh and maybe John Harbaugh, but I think he's right there after Reid and Jim Harbaugh. He's in that conversation. You can have a debate if he's as good as those other guys. So I start with the coaching staff. And this goes beyond, of course, what we've seen with just Mike Vrabel, but you look at the rest of the coaching staff, the offensive coordinator and Josh McDaniels and his reputation, Doug Marrone, offensive line coach, Terrell Williams. Talked about Terrell Williams on the Locked On Patriots podcast today. Mike Giardi had a very interesting quote from people that know Williams in the league. So I think Vrabel, he gives the Patriots an advantage over most teams in the league, and he will give an advantage to the Patriots over many teams in the AFC. As far as talent, let's look at just the roster. There are teams that I would 100% put ahead of the Patriots. And I want to know what teams you would put ahead of the Patriots. I just asked you about the coaches. How many coaches do you think are better than Mike Vrabel in the conference? How many rosters, when you look at the teams in the AFC, how many rosters would you say are unequivocally, not maybe, but unequivocally better than the Patriots? How many teams, talent-wise, would you put ahead of the Patriots out of the AFC? I've got some here. Kansas City's an obvious one. Obvious. Don't even have to talk about it. Baltimore, another obvious selection. So Kansas City, Baltimore, hands down, better, no doubt. Buffalo has a better roster than the Patriots, hands down, no doubt. The next team I would put in there is the Chargers. I do think the LA Chargers have a better roster than the Patriots. Could be closer than some people think, but I would put the Chargers ahead of the Patriots. Those four teams, to me, those four teams unequivocally, they clearly have a better roster than the Patriots. The Kansas City Chiefs, the Baltimore Ravens, the Buffalo Bills, and the LA Chargers. Four teams. Now, there are some other teams that you could debate. I'll get into that debate in just a minute, but don't forget to help a brother out. Click that thumbs up as you watch the live stream. If you watch us on demand, you can do the same thing, has the same impact. Don't forget to like the podcast, That helps us with the algorithm. It doesn't cost you anything, and it doesn't cost you a lot of time. So click that thumbs up, like this podcast. Continue to throw your comments in as well. That helps us with the algorithm. And don't forget to subscribe. Trying to hit 7,000 subscribers by mandatory minicamp. We have under a month to do so. So trying to hit 7,000 subscribers. Like, comment, subscribe, click that notify bell. Apple Pods, Spotify, friends over there. Don't forget to rate and review. Throw some comments in. That always helps. 5-star ratings always help. So I appreciate every single one of you supporting this program, supporting the Locked On podcast. Whatever I do, I can't say enough about all of you who have helped me continue to do this for my career over the past couple of years. So I appreciate every single one of you. All right, let's get back. ESPN calls the Patriots the 10th best team in the AFC. Do you agree with that? Where would you put them? I think it's a fair range, but I would have them a couple of clicks up ahead of some of these other teams. So we just ran through the coaching situations. Then the rosters. 4 teams are clearly better than the Patriots on paper. Kansas City, Baltimore, Buffalo, the Chargers. Now, there are some other teams that you're probably thinking about. And again, we can have a debate, and I think some of these teams I would put ahead of the Patriots, which is why I think the 7, 8 to 10 range is pretty fair when you look at it from 30,000 feet. There is a cluster of teams. I think you have the clear 4 that I just mentioned. Kansas City, Baltimore, Buffalo, the LA Chargers. And then you have a cluster of teams behind those 4 teams that you can go back and forth about. You look at Cincinnati. I love Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, fantastic offense. But the defense. Cincinnati has significant defensive questions. Trey Hendrickson comes out today and says the team's not talking to him post-draft. He doesn't seem happy. So I think there's some question about Cincinnati. There's also a question about how Cincinnati starts seasons. We saw that in 2024 when they got beat by the Patriots in Cincinnati in week 1. Cincinnati historically with Burrow has gotten off to slow starts. Some would say terrible starts. Will that change? I don't know. I haven't seen anything that tells me that would change. Zach Taylor, can he get this team prepared differently? Can he get them prepared on a higher level? So Cincinnati, they have some legitimate questions. They've got no doubt talent, but they've got legitimate questions. Denver is a talented roster. They've done a really good job building up that football team over the past couple of years. But that division is very difficult with the Chargers, the Chiefs, and the Raiders. We know that the Raiders have made some additions that should certainly help, starting with Geno Smith at quarterback. You, of course, have Ashton Genty at running back. You've got Tom Brady, that new front office, and somebody in Pete Carroll who wants to compete right now. So you could look at the Raiders as being better in 2025 than they've been recently, which will make it tougher on Denver. So Denver, you've got a tough division to deal with. Houston's a talented team, and I'm a fan of DeMeco Ryans, but they've got some things going on. You look at C.J. Stroud. He took a step back from his rookie season. Now, clearly, the Texans are blaming Bobby Slowick for that. They fired Slowick after he was everybody's darling in 2023. They've moved on from Slowick. So which C.J. Stroud will we see? Will we see the rookie season of C.J. Stroud? Will we see the second year of C.J. Stroud? Will we see some kind of in-between from C.J. Stroud? I'm not sure, but year 3 is going to be huge for the Texans and Stroud. Then you look at the offensive line. They have shuffled their offensive line all over the place, and I'm not so sure that it is a better offensive line right now than it was at the end of last season. So where is the offensive line with the Texans? Can they get the best out of those guys up front? I think it's a legitimate question to ask. And of course, firing Bobby Slowick means you're going to have some offensive changes. How does Stroud adapt to that? So it's really been an interesting offseason for the Texans with changes in the coaching staff, changes on the roster, some big-time decisions like trading Laramie Tunsil being made. How does that all shake out? I'm not sure. That's why I kind of have them in this group. I think it could go well. They could bounce back. They could look, better than they did last year and look closer to 2023, or they can kind of be stuck in that middle ground. So Houston's on that list. The Pittsburgh Steelers, who's the quarterback? When is Aaron Rodgers going to make his decision? I'm so tired of it. But even with Rodgers at quarterback, I would say the Steelers are kind of in that muck, right? In the rest group. So you've got Kansas City, Baltimore, Buffalo, and the Chargers for me, the clear top four right now on paper. Then you put Cincy, Denver, Houston, and Pittsburgh in that next group. And then you can put the Patriots in the mix somewhere towards the end of that prior group. I think you could argue the Patriots are better than the Steelers on paper. You could argue that. You could argue that they're going to be better than Cincinnati as a complete football team. There's no doubt Cincinnati's offense is a banger, but when you look at the Cincy defense, and if we want to talk about division, Cincinnati's going to have a pretty tough division. So when you look at how the Cincinnati roster from 1 to 53 unfolds, I think you could have that argument. You could have that debate that the Patriots are right there with the Cincinnati Bengals getting into 2025. I think you could have that argument with the Broncos, probably slightly better with Denver, but you could have that argument. Houston on paper, I would put Houston ahead of the Patriots. But again, we just discussed all the differences that are going to happen from 24 to 25. So I think the Patriots are somewhere in that next cluster of teams. And if you think they're better than the Pittsburghs and Cincinnati's and Denver's, then you could put them closer to the top 6 or 7 in the conference, and you could put them closer to being a playoff contender right now. If you think the Patriots are still behind the Steelers in Denver and Cincinnati, you could put them towards the end of that list, and they'll be around 9 or 10. I do think one team that is ranked ahead of the Patriots in this ESPN power ranking in the AFC that I would absolutely put the Patriots ahead of is the Miami Dolphins. And I know some might actually disagree with that. And it's cool. We could have that conversation. But I would put the Patriots ahead of the Dolphins for a number of reasons. Number one, the coaching staff. The Patriots coaching staff is better than the Dolphins coaching staff. Now, I know Weaver did a good job with the defense last year. Mike McDaniel, I think we've seen over the past couple of years, his play calling is starting to diminish a little bit as the league is reacting to what he does, as Tyreek Hill gets a little bit older, as the league figures out Tua within this offense. I would put the Patriots staff ahead of the Dolphins. I would say Josh McDaniels is better when you look at his long track record. I would put McDaniels ahead of McDaniel as an offensive play caller. I would put Mike Vrabel over McDaniel as a head coach. Now, defensive coordinator, I think that's a conversation between Williams and Weaver. That's a pretty tough conversation. But I like the Dolphins less than a lot of people this year. And I think that coaching staff is a part of the problem. And I would put the Patriots staff ahead of Miami's. How about Miami's offensive line? Right now, Patrick Paul is their starting left tackle. He was abysmal last year in his rookie season. So they're going from Armstead to Patrick Paul. I'm not buying the thought that he's going to be as good as Armstead was or better. I need to see that. So there is a lot of risk at left tackle for Miami this year. That's a huge question to me. How about Miami's history against good teams with Mike McDaniel as the head coach? Every single time the Dolphins play a good team, a team that's above 500, we see the record flashed by the TV, the broadcast crew, and they talk about how Miami can't beat good teams. And it's true. They've been awful against good teams. They've been awful against teams that are clearly better than them. They don't punch up from their weight. They don't. They love punching down. They also don't deal with bad weather very well. And that could be anything colder than 50 degrees. It could be snow. It could be rain. So there's a lot of different things about Miami that make me wonder if they're ready to kind of fall off the cliff this year. I don't love the coaching staff. I don't love Mike McDaniel. I don't love the offensive line. I don't love Tua if he's asked to do too much. I don't love their history against good football teams. I don't love their history with, in bad weather. They're not a team that has faced adversity and overcome it very often with Mike McDaniel as their head coach. So I would put the Patriots right now ahead of the Miami Dolphins. And I would argue that they're better than Cincinnati as a complete football team. I would argue they're better than Cincinnati. So I'd have them somewhere around 8 or 9 in the AFC instead of 10. But I could see the argument with them being put there at 10. Of course, it's May. It's May 12th. We can have a ton of change on our hands. We all understand that. This is really just kind of a fun exercise and assessment right now. I have genuine excitement for this upcoming season. I think many of you have genuine excitement for this upcoming season. If this team can stay healthy with this coaching staff, with the additions that they've made via free agency and the draft, I think it truly feels that right now 2025 is going to be the beginning of a turnaround. And I feel that, and I think many of you feel that. So I've got the Patriots right in that range, but probably a couple of clicks higher than where ESPN had them. All right, another reason for some excitement is Kyle Williams. Let's jump into Kyle Williams. You all know who he is now, third-round pick out of Washington State, wide receiver. And there was an interesting comparison that was made that I wanted to get to. And it was a comparison that Burt Breer wrote about. He posted a lot of people around the NFL liked the Patriots landing Williams in the third round. One interesting comp that Burt Breer got for Williams was Tyler Lockett. I've also heard my buddy Greg Bedard say this, that some people have told him, or at least one person told him, that Kyle Williams is very Tyler Lockett-esque. And it's a very interesting comparison to make, because let's look at yak, yards after the catch. Tyler Lockett's yak last year was 2.7 yards, 2.7 yards per reception. So let's just round it up and say 3 yards. So Tyler Lockett averaged 3 yards after the catch per reception last year. Kyle Williams is known as a yak guy. The 33rd team, the website, wrote about Williams. James Foster wrote about Williams, and here's what he wrote. In 2024, Kyle Williams ranked 4th among FBS receivers with 590 yards after the catch. Kyle Williams was the 4th best yards after the catch receiver in the FBS. Out of all the receivers, out of the entire FBS, Kyle Williams was the 4th best when it came to yards after the catch, 590 yards. And I just told you that Tyler Lockett last year for Seattle averaged just under 3 yards of yak per reception. Kyle Williams averaged 8.4 yards of yak per reception, which was 8th among receivers with at least 50 targets. So literally, when you look at the statistics, when you look at the analytics, Kyle Williams was literally one of the best receivers in college football last year in yards after the catch. He also forced 21 missed tackles, and he led the FBS with 3 screen touchdowns. And I don't see Tyler Lockett with that dimension to his game. I love Tyler Lockett, and I've loved Lockett for a long time, loved him in college, loved him in Seattle, and I think he'll be good for Tennessee. But I think Williams has more explosiveness after the catch than Lockett ever had, and especially now when you look at the stats, Williams last year versus Lockett last year, I don't think it's close. The numbers bear it out. So Kyle Williams, if you're comparing him to Lockett, just know he has a lot more juice after the catch than Lockett does. But there are similarities. And so I understand where some of these scouts, some of these sources that Burt Breer is talking to and Greg Bedard is talking to, I do understand genuinely why some of these people would be comparing Kyle Williams to Lockett, because there are the similarities. Both guys ran a 4.440. So Lockett coming out of college ran a 4.4. Kyle Williams also ran a 4.4. So their 40-yard dash exactly the same at 4.4. And then you think about the culture stuff. You think about the character. You think about the makeup. Both guys are known as having great character, being great teammates. So when you look at Lockett, the leader, Lockett, the character, right? The reputation of the character, the makeup of the player, very similar to what people say about Kyle Williams. Kyle Williams, of course, played in the bowl game this last season against Syracuse when his starting quarterback and the head coach decided to leave before the bowl game. Kyle Williams could have bagged out of that game and said, I'm going to the draft. I'm not going to play in this game. He played against Syracuse in the bowl game, and he had a tremendous performance. So you just look at the leadership, you look at the work ethic, you look at the character, those intangibles, the makeup. Lockett and Williams, a lot of similarities there. The size, a lot of similarities. Lockett's 5'10", Williams is 5'11". Lockett 182, Williams 190. So Williams just a little bit heavier than Lockett, but a very similar size. 5'10 versus 5'11, 182 versus 190. The other thing on the field that goes beyond the intangibles and goes beyond the size, on the field, both Lockett and Williams are versatile. Both Lockett and Williams can play inside-outside. Lockett played inside-outside at Seattle, and Kyle Williams played inside-outside last year for Washington State. Now, I would say Lockett played more in the slot than Williams played in the slot at Washington State. So Lockett last year in Seattle, he played 33.5% of his snaps in the slot. So 33.5% of the snaps in the slot for the Seahawks last season. Williams at Washington State played 26% of his snaps in the slot. So it's a pretty good difference there. You're talking about 7.5%. 7.5% more of the snaps Lockett played in the slot than Kyle Williams. But both guys have shown that versatility that they can play inside, they can play outside. Phil Perry, last Friday at rookie minicamp, he wrote about Kyle Williams and his day one. Here's what Phil wrote. Williams, UDFA running back Lan Larison, who we talked about on the pod going back a week or two ago, and second-year wide receiver John Giles all were busy in the passing game with multiple catches. Then this note from Phil. Williams made a leaping grab on a comeback, and a contested grab over the middle appeared to be aligned outside primarily. This is just me riffing here. This is just how I feel. I think Kyle Williams is going to play mostly on the outside. I think the Patriots looked at Williams and his production at Washington State. I think they believe that he can beat some teams vertically. I believe that they saw his release package at the line of scrimmage and feel like he can beat coverage right out the gate and make some plays. I think if you line him up outside, that opens up the door a little bit to mess around, and I'm sure Josh McDaniels will do that. I think they'll move him inside from time to time. I think they'll give him some jet sweeps. I think they'll give him some wide receiver screens because of what he showed at Washington State. But I do believe that Kyle Williams, if you're looking at this roster right now, I do believe that Kyle Williams is looked at as an X. And I think you would put him out there. Maybe Kayshon Boutte, Javon Baker will also battle for that. Stephon Diggs can play inside, outside. Will he be ready by week one? I think Diggs will be more of that move-around receiver for McDaniels. I think he's going to be more the Z. But I think they look at Kyle Williams and they say to themselves, we've got a guy that we can play on the outside. And primarily at rookie minicamp, at least the portion that was open day one to the media, that's where Williams was. He was, I don't want to say exclusively, but as Phil Perry wrote, Kyle Williams was aligned outside primarily during that first day of camp. And I'm excited to see what Kyle Williams can do. I really am. And I know we all got PTSD at that position. We all have gone through the awful drafts of wide receivers over and over and over again. We've gone through that pain. And I'm with you. I think all of us are in the same kind of spot when the Patriots draft a wide receiver in the top 3 rounds. It's I will believe it when I see it. I really liked Jalen Polk last year, and obviously that was not good. It was not a good rookie season for Jalen. So I'm at the point where I don't care. Even if I loved the guy in college, I need to see it before I believe it with this team because of the track record. And I know that they've got Mike Vrabel now and Ryan Cowden. They've got some new blood making some of these decisions, and Vrabel making all the decisions, but the conversations, I know they've got some new blood in that room. So hopefully Kyle Williams ends up being a hit. I'm excited to see him. I'm hopeful, but I am far from guaranteeing any of you that Kyle Williams is going to be a home run or even a triple. Shoot, I'm not even ready to guarantee you that Kyle Williams will be a double. Like him out of college. I had him going to the Patriots in my mock draft, if you remember. But I do not believe I can sit here and tell you with 100% certainty and guarantee you that Kyle Williams is going to be that guy. I need to see it before I believe it. Don't forget to like. Don't forget to comment. Don't forget to subscribe. Liking the podcast helps us an awful lot. Doesn't cost you any money. Doesn't cost you much time. Commenting does as well. Don't forget about that. Throw some comments into the chat. Let me know how you feel. Do you think the Patriots are better than the 10th team in the AFC? What do you feel about Kyle Williams? What do you think of that Tyler Lockett, Kyle Williams comparison that's been made by some people through local writers and national writers? Don't forget to like. Don't forget to comment. Don't forget to subscribe. The goal is 7,000 subscribers by mandatory minicamp in June. We're just under a month away. I appreciate every single one of you for joining me. As always, we are not here if it wasn't for you. I can't thank you enough. We're back on Wednesday at 3 o'clock right here on YouTube.